And good day, good night, and welcome to World Cup today. Day 4, I guess, Duane, day 4, I don't know, I'm already confused. Watching 4 games back to back to back to back yesterday. And you know, I did not watch any US Open Cup games last night. I'm sorry, Major League Soccer. I'm sorry, US Open Cup. I'm sorry, USL. I might be failing there, but 4 games back to back World Cup was enough for me.
Follow the news with MLS. We didn't talk about the Jason Kreis firing, which we will maybe do that if we have. There's no downtime in this. I mean, maybe during a day when we get past the group stage, we'll have time to get back into MLS coverage a little bit more when we, World Cup today during the World Cup. So we'll see. But yeah, Kevin, I was just thinking as the music came on there, though, I really kind of miss Pyeongchang because I like K-pop more than that weird Russian stuff we got going there, I got to say.
Yeah, true, but I did have some great comments from multiple listeners about this Russian music. Kind of sets the tone, and it's kind of fitting in a way to Russia. So far, a problem-free World Cup, pretty much. We haven't heard any great big things happening. There's, of course, some scuffles here and there and some things happening, but there's nothing major really happening. No big problems like we've seen in South Africa in 2010 or even in Brazil with the amenities surrounding the World Cup. So this has been so far a well-organized World Cup, I have to say.
Yeah, the only worry going into the Russian World Cup wasn't necessarily about organization, the ability to have the stadiums go. This is Mother Russia. They're going to get it done when they have to, especially when the world is watching. A little chaotic there at times, but I think the concern was always going to be outside of the fan areas, outside of the stadium areas, whether there would be problems. And I think tomorrow is going to be that big test because England plays tomorrow, and I'm not blaming the English, but the English attract. England is the home of the hooligan, right? So if you're a Russian hooligan, you want to measure yourself. You're going to go try and find the big bad English hoolies who probably aren't there. They're families of 4. They're just trying to enjoy the game.
By now they're especially if you go back from the same crop of the late 80s, early 90s. It's 2018, so they're like in their 50s and it's long gone. But tomorrow, England-Tunisia. We'll go over that matchup a bit later. Let's start with the matchup from yesterday that we did not have a chance to talk about so far. Yesterday, we did talk about France and Australia. But yesterday, Peru-Denmark was a matchup that I was looking forward to. Peru in the World Cup, the first time since 1982. It has been 36 years since Peru made it into the World Cup. This has been pretty much a unfair result. Not necessarily unfair, because Denmark was all measured in the way they got their goal. They caught him on the counter, and Poulsen finished it clinically, and he got themselves a 1. I'm surprised it's not even Eriksson. Granted, Eriksson actually set up the goal, so it's still built by Eriksson. But Denmark got the 1-0 victory over Peru, and I was left feeling like Peru deserved a lot better. Kasper Schmeichel playing like his father and stopping everything for Denmark.
Yeah, look, I thought Peru, obviously the penalty miss, which was Baggio did, if you follow. So that's, or I heard Waddle did too. If you're an English fan, you can go with that.
He pretty much Jovinko'd it too.
Oh yeah, he did, or Bradley did. We're getting right into this now.
He Messi'd it.
Well, Messi at least hit the net. We could go on all day on this one. Yeah. No, but it was a bad penalty take, and the nerve sort of kicked in there. You're right. Peru looked the better team throughout that match. I picked them as one of my dark horses going in, and I think that they kind of both proved me right and wrong yesterday. They did certainly look like they were full measure to compete, but now they've lost those 3 points, and that's massive. And they're in tough to get out of this group at this point. They're going to need to pull the upset to have a chance.
Yeah, they have to beat France. France has not looked the greatest against Australia, but they got the job done. Peru would need to put on as good as performance as they did as Denmark against France to get a chance to get a result. I'm not saying it's impossible, but France is not Denmark, so.
Well, yeah, or Australia. There's other connotations. If Australia mixes things up and it doesn't go chalk and you get a nix a point off of or 2-3 even off of Denmark's possible. Obviously, there's lots of math going in here, but this one you looked at this one and circled it going in and thinking this is probably for number 2. And with Denmark nicking the win, they're now very much in the driver's seat here. And it's unfortunate for Peru. As I said, I have a soft spot for them. I have a lot of Peruvian friends. I was texting them from I wasn't able to go meet them tomorrow. I hope to get down there for the second game to La Fiesta, or El Fiesta, which is on St. Clair West. If you're in Toronto, it's a fun little place to watch a Peruvian game. So I'm hoping to get out there for the next one. But it sounded like they were having fun in the lead up. I'm not too sure how much fun they were having after, because it was a very disappointing result for them to not be able to get that goal after such a long wait to get back.
You know what's funny? I was on my way for a little walk after watching Peru-Denmark, and I was still wearing my French jersey, of course, because France won. So I'm walking down the street, and lo and behold, someone wearing a Peru jersey walks up next to me, and he looks at me, kind of happy and not at the same time, saying, "Hi." So I'm like, "Hi, you did good." Like, it's too bad. They're like, "Yeah, it's too bad, but it's fine. We'll beat you guys." I'm like, man, that escalated quickly. Like, I didn't ask for anything, and this person just launched at me.
Yeah, they're very proud, the Peruvians. I remember I've seen Peru play live before. They played Canada at BMO Field 6-7 years ago now, and they've often Canadian stadiums will get full by the opposition fans, as you know. But it was a different level when Peru came. There's probably BMO was 22,000 at the time. And I suspect there were 18,000 in the stands, and 14,000 of them were wearing white strips with the red stripe down the chest. So
nice trip, by the way. And that's one thing that I like about World Cup. Even though we have a lot of brand new jerseys like Nigeria and company that are trying to mix it up pretty much every 4 years, I kind of like the aspect of keeping the same damn jersey every 4 years. Peru's iconic now, right? And it looks the same as it did in '82 when you look at the footage, and it kind of gives an identity, and I kind of like that. I kind of like the ARGvsISL, just their jersey. You have different iterations, but you'll never see another type of design than the white and yellow of Argentina, right? And those little identity focus of teams, I kind of like it.
No, for sure. I mean, look, you mentioned the Argentine jersey, the sky blue and white stripes. Uruguay is always going to have the sky blue. I mean, these are traditional jerseys, but they fiddle around with the second jerseys or the third jerseys now, especially at the club level. But you're right. The iconic strip is something that you all like to see. I mean, I'm a Manchester City supporter, for those that don't know. Before the money. I came in before the money, new listeners. Anyway.
Why do you need to justify yourself? I like Chelsea since 2004. It's exactly when the money came in. What do you want me to do about it? That's when it happened. It's not necessarily like a choice. It just happened, man.
Okay, fair enough. Anyway, but we lost our mind when they changed the short color, right, from white to blue. No, it's supposed to be white. Like, it has to be. And
never mind when they changed the badge. That was something.
They changed the badge like 4 times at this point, so whatever.
Anyway. But then we were talking about the Albiceleste, Argentina. Let's continue on that. They played yesterday against Iceland, and that was a cracker of a match. I really enjoyed that match. The pressure Iceland was putting on Argentina, not laying down, answering boom for boom, penalty for penalty. It wasn't a penalty for Iceland. It was a goal from the run of play, and Messi did not score the penalty. It was a great save by the Iceland goalkeeper, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce any Icelander name. Now that I can, Finn Bogason.
Call them all Son.
Yes, Son, or Finn Bogason. I know that one. That was pretty good, and he scored. That was fitting for him to score the first goal at a World Cup level for Iceland, the way it happened in the game too, not too long after Argentina's goal. And it was literally it changed the momentum of the game, and it showed that Iceland was going to go tackle for tackle. And that's what I like. At duels, Iceland were not necessarily giving the space to Argentina. They were playing Iceland type of football, pressing and physically pressing with their shoulders, whatever part of their body that was closest to it, literally trying to influence the possession of the play each and every single second of the match. That pressure becomes relentless, and the type of blue collar, like literally they have blue collars, but I'm talking about blue collar type of soccer for Iceland got them a result, and they look a lot better than I anticipated. They look a lot better than I imagined you anticipated, because we thought Cinderella was Well, I thought it was going to be midnight yesterday, and I guess it wasn't. The Cinderella story moves on. A 1-1 draw that feels like a win for Iceland.
Well, yeah, and Fox, they ended their commentary, and this is getting a lot of rounds on the internet because,
but there was a part of the headline that was missing. It was a callback to an old headline. If you go to Grant Wall, he explains it on his Twitter feed. So before we hear all the hoopla, it's like, oh, Americans don't know anything. No, Americans can laugh at themselves sometimes too.
Yeah, it's what was English people are trying to make fun of the damn Yanks that don't know anything when they're completely taken out of context. The line that they used was Iceland wins 1-1, which is fitting. It actually works. It works even without the context because if you're a sports fan, you know exactly what that means. They won 1-1. That Argentina lost 1-1, right? Like it's absolutely lost points for Argentina, game points for Iceland there, and a historic result for them. As we said yesterday, could you imagine being a longtime Iceland fan that was watching, them play the minnows of the world in friendlies 12, 15 years ago, and now you're lining up at the World Cup to play Lionel Messi, and you're stopping him. You're preventing him from scoring. You're stopping him on a penalty. It wasn't a great shot. And something like I'd like to see. I've heard Messi's penalty stats. There've been a lot of them. People have been putting them out there around the world. In the days that happened, he scores on like 72% of his penalties or something, which isn't terrible, but it's not what you'd think out of a guy like him either.
But the amount of penalty that he does take is a lot more than the rest of it. So just by sample size, the fact that it's a lot bigger, you expose yourself for a bad stat there because there's more opportunity for failure too. If you're taking 2 penalties a year and you bury those 2, you're going to have a great stat. If you're taking 50 and you miss whatever percentage, 30, which is like normal. At some point you'll miss. At some point you'll become predictable. At some point the goalkeeper knows what to do. And now with the advent of communications and study and research for the goalkeepers that actually find ways to study, and they have like assistants, and then they have the signage from the sideline to them to tell them what the tendencies are of the players on which side, in the middle, whatever. So it's a different ball game. And now the goalkeepers are not necessarily advantage, but we're seeing, just in my lifetime, I'm seeing a lot more penalties stopped now than 20 years ago.
No, they're just getting better. I mean, and that's good. I think that the penalty, it should be a challenge because when the laws were made in 18 whatever, it wasn't intended to be like an automatic goal, which it kind of was becoming for a while, right? I don't think a handball in the very corner of the box is necessarily should be rewarded with an automatic goal. There should be some kind of a challenge that happens to it. It begs the question, though, to get back on the Messi thing, and obviously this is a talking point, all around the world today. They have Sergio Aguero on that pitch too, who takes the penalties for Manchester City and is very efficient at them. So at some point you have to decide whether you don't want to get into Messi's head. Do you, because he's missed his penalty? Do you want to put Aguero up next? I mean, that's a great thing about Argentina. You have weapons like that, and God help any team that meets them in a penalty shootout because there's a lot of talent there. It's an interesting question.
Why? Look, and that's going to be a question that it's a character of Messi too. Messi at the okay, it's going to be a big discussion here, and it might be sparked by a meme that I saw yesterday or this morning. I think it was yesterday. You see Messi going into a burning house, okay? There's 2 people who need to be saved. There's someone wearing an Argentina kit and then someone wearing a Barcelona kit. And the image after, you see Messi running out with the person wearing the Barcelona kit, right? And then the other meme is Ronaldo going into the same burning house, seeing someone wearing the Portugal kit, someone wearing the Real Madrid kit, taking both persons and running out of the burning house, right? So what's the idea here? That Ronaldo's there to save Portugal, but Messi's not there to save Argentina. Messi might be putting too much pressure on himself and taking him out. If there's another penalty for Argentina in this World Cup, maybe you do put Aguero or Mascherano, whatever, Di Maria if he's on the pitch. Any other 10 players at that level, even the goalkeeper would bear that penalty at some point because, well, they're good. So you take that pressure of carrying the entirety of Argentina on your shoulder, and you give Aguero some responsibility. You give Higuain, who's going to be the sub, probably super sub for Aguero, might be playing in the second game probably. But you give those type of players some responsibility so Messi doesn't have to carry everything on him, right? And that pressure, look at him. Look at his face at the final whistles last morning. He was exhausted just by carrying that pressure of a country. And then you have the Maradona situation, which Maradona gets arrested because he tries to force himself into the locker room to confront Lionel Messi because he's a bad penalty kicker. That's a crazy added pressure that you had to the whole conversation. But this pressure needs to be shared. You can't carry your entirety of your country. And look at Ronaldo. even though he might not want to, if you actually ask him, he does pass the ball to his teammates, and he did score 3 goals, but he did score goals with the help of his teammate in service and, of course, the free kick and the penalty. But the second goal, it was a shot from distance. He got the ball from someone, even though might want to see the save again. What I'm saying is Messi should not carry the entirety of the pressure for Argentina, and taking him off penalty duties might be a way to do that.
No, precisely. I'm shocked that Maradona would demonstrate aggressive, irrational.
He did too? And I think we need to talk about this, because we need to take the cult of personality away from this man, because this man's a terrible man, terrible man. South Korean fans were present in the stadium watching the game and like being involved, and they, Diego, hello Diego. So Diego obliges and says hello, turns around, looks at people that are there surrounding him, people that he thinks are friends, makes racist gesture connotation with his eyes and his fingers, and then laughs it off. That's the type of man, that's the type of mental condition he is in right now. So that explains a lot when he's trying to force himself into Argentina's locker room and put even more pressure on Messi.
Well, yeah, look, we're not going to get into speculation here, but he's a man who's had a history of erratic behavior. So we'll leave it at that. And hopefully maybe this will keep him away from that, because they don't need the pressure of having Maradona staring at them either. That's the thing. And there's no team in this World Cup probably with as much pressure as Argentina. They're even though they're unfancied by many, there's a lot of internal pressure. There's a lot of external pressure within that country for them to be successful. They were World Cup finalists last time, too. It's funny that we completely dismiss the possibility of Argentina going deep in this tournament again, simply because there's real reasons. We saw in
qualification,
the draw.
Right? In qualification, they needed Messi's hat trick in the final game, their final shot in the playoff, to make it in. So,
yeah, well, that's Rudy Schuler made the joke on Twitter immediately. Lionel Messi never shows up for Argentina. Space. People who have never watched Argentina play before, right? Like,
yeah,
they're not there without him.
Yeah, it's your narrative that you want to push, right? You can make anything say anything if you truly want to. But yeah, of course. So that game was shocking, but for Iceland, wow, they impressed me the way they played. They're full measure for that result, and you know what? They could have beaten Argentina if these games happen another 10 times. I don't know. I think they split 5, or they draw 4 or 5, and they split the wins between each other because they were full measure. Iceland's stop on the penalty was not a luck. It was easy save almost, you could say. Maybe it was a bad penalty taken by Messi, maybe. But the rest of the game, the way Iceland played, they nullified Messi. So that's something.
Well, a lot of people like to really rip on the low block, the park and the bus, if you prefer the colloquial term. The low block is a skill, though, and when it's done effectively, it can be very effective, particularly if you have some poachers up front that can take advantage of the breaks that you do get, which is the style Iceland wants to play.
Which is how they scored, right? They scored off the pressing of their forwards in a losing of possession by the left back of Argentina that led to the play that led to the goal of Iceland. So that's exactly right what you're saying.
Yeah, well, Leicester won the Premier League playing a similar style where they had a little bit more going forward, and they had Vardy going that year. So it's not a direct comparison, but that's what started this evolution to the low block and pounce kind of counter tactics that are all the rage right now. I mean, the possession-based teams are few and far between. There are some still out there that still are trying to play tiki-taka. They're still trying to play a highly possession-based, artistic type game. But the low block is now ruling the game, and it's not necessarily a low block in the old ways, right? It's direct, but not direct in the old ways. It's a bus park, but not in the way that they do it. It's a combination of playing aggressive up front and also being tight at the back. And Iceland does it very well. Do they have enough firepower to go deep? I don't know, but certainly the result there was great, Kevin.
And when you think about a low block, you imagine sometimes 2 line of 4, right? You imagine your 4 defenders and your 4 midfielders in 2 line of 4 and making like a tough job for any midfielder to break them even from the midfield or from the flanks. But the way now that it's being played, it's a bit more man than zone in their type of coverage defensively in those 2 lines. So even though there's overlapping of the offensive players to counteract the low block, now the low block tactic is to be malleable and to move the lines with the man and make sure the mans are marked to create no passing lanes between the overlap. So there's a lot of new tactics involved into the low block, and it's about pretty much putting 8 players in the defensive options with a few free players, like a 2 offensive midfielder that will be still defensive, but will have a responsibility to launch a counterattack like we've seen Denmark yesterday. Denmark played very defensively with a very low block, but found ways to have Christian Eriksen and Poulsen in a more free roaming role, a bit higher than the block, and you see this great movement of action that you can catch on the counterattack if the bounce comes your way. And we've seen this more and more in a team like Iceland that is realistic about their strength and not necessarily thinking, oh, we got a great goal scorer, we'll put them there. Well, no, you gotta make sure that you defend before you attack. And the World Cup really shows us that tactically you might need to be a bit more conservative than usually to get that chance eventually offensively.
Oh, for sure. And look, in the pre-tournament lead-up, I was low on Portugal's chances, and I'm completely flipped around after seeing them play the one game, precisely because they're able to play that combination game, and they have such a great player up front. Portugal can play this new tactic, this lower block, pierce them on the counter, have people up front that can finish their chances. The difference is that they have one hell of a person up front who can finish the chances. And the other thing that I'm seeing and noticing already in this World Cup is that the ball is moving. The Colorado goal today on the free kick that we'll talk about in a minute, I mean, the ball moves on the free kicks now. It is absolutely a ball that has a physics to it that is allowing people to bend it in ways that we're not used to seeing. So I think free kicks and set pieces are going to play a major role in this tournament as well. So that even more lends itself into a team being patient in its chances and trying to draw on counters, because the one way to stop a counter is to foul the guy. And if you are fouling the guy and they're scoring free kicks at a high rate, you're going to think twice before you do that, which is then going to give them a chance on goal, right?
Is it 3?
So I think it's lending it all itself to that.
For sure, 3 or 4 goals on free kicks so far this World Cup, and that already equals the amount of free kick goals that were present in Brazil 4 years ago. So that's something. You already have more free kick goals, and this might be a reason. The ball itself, and also some of the teams. I saw the stats a few months ago. Like 30% of goals are scored off free kick. Like if you take the whole game and put everything together and you do an estimation, around 30% of goals comes off free kick, and free kick is like 5% of the actual play. So there's a higher probability of goal scoring opportunities off free kick, and that's why a lot of teams are practicing this more and more. And when it comes to a tournament like the World Cup, where teams are not necessarily used to playing together to the level of the club game, they do have some susceptibility in the set pieces department. If you're a team that practiced them, you might find an advantage there, and that might be what we're seeing too. Added with the movement of the ball comes a lot of free kick goals.
Well, precisely. If anyone wants to get me one of those balls, I'm still really open to it. I might even be able to bend it. Bend it like Duane.
Bend it like Rollins. Doesn't sound the same like the famous movie, but I'll watch that movie. Sure, it's going to be a 10-minute movie. I'll watch it.
It's a 10-minute movie of me kicking the ball 60 times and once it moving slightly to the left and me going, yes!
There's one time a few years ago, I was at the park next to my place, and I was just by myself, with the ball, doing volleys, and I hit the most amazing volley. It went really high and dipped right in the corner. I turn around, there's no one there. No one was looking at me. No one was filming me so if I hit a free kick in the net in the most beautiful way possible and no one sees it, did it really happen?
I once on a par 3 hit the ball within 2 inches of the cup on the drive, and I was almost thankful that it didn't go in because no one would have believed me if it had.
You just look like a fool who's trying to promote himself. But no, it really happened. I really made that volley in the net, and it was the most beautiful curling shot you've ever seen. I just wish someone was there to see it. All right, well, let's move on now. We've talked about Peru, Denmark. We've talked about Argentina and Iceland. Let's move to Croatia, Nigeria. Croatia 2, Nigeria 1. This could have been 4-0 Nigeria. Croatia hit the post.
Good.
No, Nigeria did not look good. Africa, after one game, did not look good. But Croatia, how they look great and they hit the bar. It could have been 4 or 5 goals, but they got 2 at the end, and it was enough for them to get the points and first place in their group so far.
And Croatia is obviously the team that I did pick as my true dark horse, the dark horse that I thought on a perfect storm could go very deep into a medal game in this. Kevin, this is probably a good opportunity. I did the math on the rest of my Confederation points per game stats since 1998 in the 32 team World Cup. So I might as well pull it out because Africa is not having a good World Cup so far. And I mean, it doesn't get talked about a lot. I have noticed. I remember the first time I ever did these, and I've done these in every World Cup since 2004. I figured them out heading in just to sort of have an understanding, because there's always been this narrative that the African teams are ready to break through. They're right on the cusp of breaking through. And we've had some great African teams in the past, in each World Cup, singular, right? There's always the Cameroon in the 90, and Ghana has gone deep a couple of times, right? But when you look at the entirety of the African play in the World Cup, there really hasn't been anything close to a breakthrough. And what I noticed in the lead up to this one is no one's talking about the African teams again. I think people are finally beginning to understand that after being disappointed time and time again, that we're really not that any closer to a breakthrough. It's just not happening.
No, I'll let you say the numbers, and I know the conclusion, and I'm going to talk about this after. So I'll let you mention the number right now, and then we'll talk about the region that is maybe the best of the rest, or number 3 out of 5.
All right. So first off, let's put Oceania to the side because they've only qualified twice, and Australia was one of them, and they're now in Asia. So they're 1.66 points per game because of New Zealand's remarkable undefeated run, and Australia got a win in there too. But let's put them aside. UEFA is a tough one to figure out because they play each other in the groups. But when you eliminate that, they're at like games that they're playing each other. It's 2.0 points per game. They're just behind South Africa at 2.1 points per game. The third best confederation, putting Oceania aside again, is actually CONCACAF at 1.17 points per game. Africa at 0.93, Asia at 0.7, as we said the other day. So those are your numbers on what the confederations have done in the 32-team World Cup.
And my conclusion is, if you just go back to 4 years ago, 3 out of the 4 CONCACAF teams made it out of the group stage. And it wasn't necessarily not even a surprise, like Mexico, Costa Rica, and who was it? The other one in Honduras. I forgot the third one. Which one was
that? US. Honduras did not. They were the only one that did not.
Exactly. So that's F Honduras. If you're a long-time listener of the show, F Honduras. Maybe I'll put this on a shirt, Duane. F Honduras.
Hashtag FH. Yeah, to sell it to Squizzato.
By the way, speaking of shirts, we have a brand new partner with the network and World Cup today. It's sportsinspired.ca. Great collection of clothing inspired by greatness. There's the collection inspired by the World Cup that's available now, and the collection inspired by the Tour as well, if you know what I'm talking about. For cycling fans, it's coming up real quickly in France, and you have yourselves a few t-shirts inspired. There's t-shirts, socks, caps, hoodies. Great collection, really looks great. There's a Call It Football t-shirt, which is our most biggest seller so far, and as well for Yoga Bonito, a Brazil-inspired t-shirt that is Brazil colors and will give you a nice look if you're looking to watch Brazil, or if you're looking to a samba class, you're gonna look just damn fine.
There you go. Support the sponsors. All right, Kevin. Yeah, we should talk a little bit about the result today too, as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Costa Rica looked old to me a little bit. Navas was remarkable, and without him, that's probably a 2 or 3 goal win. That Costa Rica is behind there, that Serbia gets on that one. I don't know what your take on the game was, but I thought that it was probably a fair result, maybe even a little bit complimentary to Costa Rica, who I do think is one World Cup beyond their peak years. When their peak year was pretty good, they got quarterfinal.
Yeah, that's peak Ticos 4 years ago. I don't disagree. And when you have a player like Johan Venegas, I was, on a personal level, I was happy to see Venegas play at the World Cup level. Again, a player that I always enjoyed watching and rubbing shoulders when he was with the Montreal Impact a bit. Never really had a breakthrough moment in Major League Soccer, either for Montreal or for Minnesota. He did have some in Brazil 4 years ago. But Johan Venegas playing in a bit more defensive role for Costa Rica. And you have the MLS contingent with Costa Rica that really does well. The Bolaños missed a great shot. He was offside, but could have tied it up. There's a few instances, but I think it was a game effect or score effect. You know, when you're losing 1-0, they changed the way they played as soon as. Of course, there's too many games. I have too many teams in my Serbia. Thank you. It's a forgettable team. Serbia, when they scored the first goal, they changed their tactics, Costa Rica, right away. It's like they were expecting to go down. Like, okay, we're down now, so let's move to this portion of our plan, which is throw everything forward and hope for not being broke on the counter. So there's that aspect. But Costa Rica, yeah, you're right. They were not as fast as they were 4 years ago, and their speed and their style of play 4 years ago was weighed a lot in the balance of their results. This 4 years later, with the same crop of players, a few differences here and there, but yeah, you don't have the same amount of speed to the team, which, if you remember, 4 years ago, Costa Rica was breaking defenses by getting great chances on the flanks. And of course, their major win to start the tournament, 3-1 against Uruguay 4 years ago, really gave them an aura of attacking flair that they could carry to game number 2 and 3 of the group stage. They did not have that today, and it doesn't look like it's going to be easy. And at this point, I think I'm going to even have to change my prediction. I don't think Costa Rica will make it out of the group if they play the same way as they did today versus that team that I keep forgetting, Serbia.
Yeah, look, this was a must-win. We use that term too much, must-win in sport, but in a 3-team group, when Brazil's one of the teams in your group, you got to beat the team that a lot of people are considered equal to you. If you don't, really, at this point, you need to get an offset against Brazil, and I don't think that's very likely. I mean, that's never say never, balls around, blah, 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 but basically that's what they're looking at now. 3 points will not get you out of a group very likely. It's 4 is usually the minimum you need to get out of any group in the World Cup. I'd have to go back and look to see if 3 has ever gotten a team out. So if they don't get anything against Brazil, they're done. So that's where Costa Rica stands right now. But look, it's been a remarkable generation, a remarkable run for the Costa Ricans. I do think that they're going to need to turn that team over in the immediate days after the World Cup. They're in CONCACAF, so they'll have a chance to do just that. The League of Nations starts up next year for them, so there'll be lots of opportunity before they're really into games that matter in terms of qualifying. That's the advantage of being in a CONCACAF country, unless you're us, which they all matter immediately. But it's going to be, I think, the end of an era for this Costa Rican team. But it's an era that a country like Costa Rica would kill to have, that we'll dream of and we'll talk about forever. And they were close to winning that quarterfinal game last year too. They were not in there to just make the numbers up against Holland in that game. So a remarkable run, but I think they're just a little too old right now.
All right, we'll take a very short break and come back with our preview for tomorrow.
Как в самоваре, так и страсть наша, и месяц смотрит в окно. Маша чай мне наливает, а взор ее так много обещает.
World Cup Today is brought to you by sportsinspired.ca, clothes inspired by greatness. And we're back on World Cup Today, Duane. Tomorrow, a few big games. There's one, of course, this afternoon, Brazil-Switzerland. There's Mexico-Germany in a few minutes if you're listening to us live. We'll talk about those games more tomorrow. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, those games already happened, so we're not going to dwell on those. But tomorrow, there's a game with a certain team. England, Tunisia, and there's, of course, Sweden and South Korea, too. But I think we're going to talk about England and Tunisia for a little while.
I'm fascinated by South Korea and Sweden in my own unique way. But,
England's it might be the worst game we've seen so far. Sweden, South Korea, yeah.
Well, Sweden likes to play that low block that we just talked about against a team that's not very good, so I don't know how that's going to work. But at any rate, England is a game that most people are going to be looking at. There's a lot of people in the city that I'm in will be calling in sick tomorrow. They're going to have that mysterious 4-hour flu in the afternoon, so that's something that's going to happen. It's a World Cup to me. As I tell the story many, many times, my very first World Cup memories are very fleeting and they're very fuzzy, and they involve my country of Canada qualifying. But my true World Cup memory starts with that 1990 English team that went to the semifinals and lost in penalties to the Germans in that semifinal. So England, combined with the fact that my grandmother and my grandmother's family were all English, has always been my team outside of the country I live in. And so World Cup doesn't really start for me until I see the Three Lions out there. That said, it's always a World Cup needs that drama of England doing something, either good or bad, or they're rarely indifferent. They're always entertaining. So the World Cup really cranks up. They often get late groups. I've noticed this in England. They often get H or G. Like they're often late in the run, so you don't get to see them till like 4 or 5 days into World Cup. That's pretty normal.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to think about it. It's some of the teams that do have away support. If that's for conspiracy theorists, if you think that things are all like fixed, they're later in the group stage, so people have the time to get there and to buy tickets. So well, I don't know, but maybe. But England, Tunisia. Technically, England is the favorite in this game. If you're looking at the England lineup versus the Tunisia lineup, it should be a no-brainer. But it's never simple. It's never easy with England. How are you approaching this game?
Technically, England was the favorite against Trinidad and Tobago. Technically, England was the favorite against Algeria. Technically, England was the favorite against the United States, right? Like I think in some ways, and I look at this English team, and I like what Southgate is doing and what the Old English FA is doing in terms of how they're building from the bottom up for the first time in a long time, and not sort of just creating an all-star team, which is kind of what they've been doing for the last 20 years, to not great success. I think that, as I said in the preview, that this is a bit of a bridge World Cup. There's still kind of a hybrid going on there, that they're haven't quite finished the whole project that they're trying to do below and trying to build with the young guys and trying to establish that English identity and that pride in wearing the English shirt. Because that's always been a bit of the problem too, is that there lacks a certain passion for representing England in the same way that you might find in other countries, because that really is a club over country culture there, for a lot of reasons. The fan base is, there's a lot of English people I know that don't even really cheer for the English national team. It's more of like a punchline to them, right?
Well, you know why though, right? When you have a girlfriend, if it's your first girlfriend and doesn't end well, when you have a first girlfriend, a first love, and you kind of get dumped when you're not expecting, and then you have your hopes up again, and you make it deep, and you have your heart broken again, then you have another go, and you have your heart broken again. Yeah, it's hard to love after that. So maybe that's the explanation. Maybe people are just worried to get their heart broken again.
Yeah, and there's also there's a lot going on there. With too much to dive into now. There's perception that the English fans were marring England's image back in the 80s and early 90s, not even the 80s mostly. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on there, and that ties into a lack of wanting to be affiliated with it. The fact that there's the home nations are part of it, which splits away loyalties. I think even within England itself, because families are split like any other place. There's a lot going on there, but England, that said, is massively supported nonetheless. It will be outside of the game this afternoon, which will attract a lot of casual fans, and Portugal, obviously here in the city that I'm in. This will be the hardest place to get into because Italy's not in this World Cup. So if you're planning on going out in Toronto or in any English-speaking city pretty much in North America, then go early. Go for lunch and stick around, because it will be a hop-in place. It is a lot of people's second team beyond their home country. It is a lot of people's first team, even though they have a home country. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I enjoy it. Tunisia is... we'd be liars if we said that we had a great deal of knowledge of the Tunisian team. I know that they're organized. I know that they have demonstrated an ability to play pretty strong, but they're also pretty much considered maybe the weakest of the African teams, and these African teams don't look great. So should be a win for England tomorrow, but you never know with this team.
Yeah, Morocco, which was the first African team we saw, did not look great. Neither did Nigeria yesterday, so it's a question.
And Egypt as well. But Egypt might be the best of them all. But
Egypt was the first African team we saw. What am I talking about? Jesus,
because Egypt doesn't seem African, and
Morocco either.
They're more Arab in their orientation. That's why I always forget they're in Africa too.
I guess me too.
Don't worry. The other day I said Nigeria was the first African team to play when they were the third. So that's not worrying. But
I think that's your fault. That's why I said this. It's your fault. That's what I remember. Yeah. Anyways, now we'll briefly touch on those two games because it's starting in 17 minutes. If you're listening to us live, by the way. I'm going out for Brazil and Switzerland this afternoon, all against Zamali. Let's go, Brazil. I'm going to CRCvsSER. If you are in the Montreal region and want to join me, come to CRCvsSER, a place from a listener of our show. He's the owner, and I've been invited to go there. So come and see me. I'll be doing some videos probably from there as well. So make sure you follow me on social media at Kev Laramee. And tomorrow, Duane, I'm going to the only place I could go in the entire city of Montreal to watch England. I hope to get in time because we're going to have to do a show earlier. And I'm trying to at least get out of Dodge and make sure I get into the place. But Pub Burgundy Lion will be where I'll be watching England tomorrow. Come say hello if you are going to those two places. Make sure you catch me. I'll be there. You see my face. Just say hello and we'll talk about footy. But yeah, this is going to be a great game. Brazil, Switzerland. Former Montreal Impact player Blair Zamali, probably in the starting 11 for Switzerland. And yeah, I kind of want Brazil to win.
Yeah, and if you're in Toronto, I will be on St. Clair West, likely at Chapa, St. Clair and Lansdowne. So, you can come say hi there too if you want. It depends on the crowd and where we can get in because that's Little Brazil up there. So it's going to be great. I don't know. Brazil is actually a very interesting team in this World Cup because of the 7-1 in the last World Cup. There are a lot of people I think are reluctant to buy full in, but this is still Brazil, and this is Brazil that topped South American qualifying. So that's I think we need to at one point move beyond and be willing to buy in. This should be one of the co-favorites of the whole tournament. So this would be great to see. We got Germany coming up next, which is in minutes, so we won't really get into that one too much. But we're going to see, I think, the two biggest favorites on the tournament today. So we're going to have a great idea. We'll have seen all of the powerhouses, with all due respect to England, have seen them all.
You haven't seen Belgium yet, so maybe that's the other one.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Belgium tomorrow is the only last one in there, but Belgium's kind of on that cusp. So after today, we're going to have a very good idea of where things are. And that's going to be interesting.
Belgium, Panama, right? If I'm not mistaken, tomorrow as well. So
yeah, I believe so. So that's not going to tell us much anyway either. I don't think we've got to watch them play England. I think
exactly. All right, that'll be all for today. As always, don't forget to follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. We'll be back tomorrow, probably earlier than anticipated. We want to make sure we have time to actually get into the bar where we want to watch England, so we might go really early tomorrow, and then we'll move on with our day and do a second show probably tomorrow when we come back from the pub. So maybe a very interesting show for England after Duane and I come back each other respectively from our each other favorite pub in Toronto and Montreal. Duane.
Fair enough. Yeah, could be late. Could be no, it won't be sloppy. Don't worry. It's too hot. It's so hot today. Make sure you hydrate, and I don't mean just beer, folks. Call your dad.
Call your dad, which I need to do right now. But make sure you drink 1 glass of water between each beers.
There you go.
That's the answer. That's the secret. And we'll be back tomorrow with more soccer talk. As always, we're live daily during the 2018 FIFA World Cup. You can find podcast versions of our show at sportspodcastingnetwork.com and anywhere you get your podcast. Sportsinspired.ca, your place to get sports-inspired merchandise, right? Isn't it great? Isn't it fitting? A nice Yoga Bonito t-shirt is available if you're a Brazil fan for only $25, and as well a Call It Football t-shirt if you're one of those that want to make sure that people know where your allegiance stands. Call It Football. And we'll be back tomorrow. Have a great soccer.